The night was quiet in the neighborhood, a calm that usually brought relief after a long day. Streetlights cast a soft yellow glow on the empty roads, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees lining the sidewalks. In the middle of this peaceful scene, a woman was driving home, her mind focused on the long hours she had spent at the courthouse. She had been preparing cases, reading through files, and arguing motions all day. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on her shoulders, but she always felt a sense of purpose in her work. She was aware of the world around her as she drove, always cautious but never expecting anything unusual to happen in her quiet neighborhood. Her car moved steadily along the lanes, headlights cutting through the darkness. She had always respected the rules, and she knew that she was a careful driver. Tonight, however, would turn out to be nothing like the ordinary drives she was used to. A police officer on patrol had noticed her car. He was supposed to keep the streets safe, but he carried with him a bias that clouded his judgment. In his eyes, certain drivers looked suspicious based on nothing more than appearance and assumptions. As he followed her vehicle from a distance, he began to see her as a threat without reason. He didn't know who she was, nor did he care to find out. His mind filled with prejudgments, imagining scenarios that were not real. The woman continued driving, unaware that she had drawn the officer's attention. She noticed a car behind her but assumed it was just another late-night driver. She did not imagine that someone would target her simply because of the color of her skin. The officer activated his siren, ordering her to pull over. Confused, she slowed down safely, expecting a routine traffic stop. But the tension in the air was palpable, the officer's demeanor aggressive, unlike any standard procedure she had ever encountered. She rolled down her window slightly, trying to communicate calmly. She spoke politely, introducing herself and asking if there was a problem. Her voice was steady, professional, and careful not to provoke any unnecessary tension. The officer, however, remained on edge, his eyes narrow, his hand twitching near his weapon. His training should have reminded him to remain calm and assess the situation rationally, but his bias had clouded his judgment entirely. The woman reached into her purse and took out her identification, revealing her badge. "I am a prosecutor," she said calmly. "I work for the district attorney's office. I am following all traffic laws. Please tell me what the issue is." Her tone was firm but respectful, trying to de-escalate the situation. The officer barely glanced at the ID, his suspicion stronger than reason. In a split second, fear and bias collided, and he made a decision that would change everything. Suddenly, without any further warning or clear cause, the officer fired his weapon, shattering the passenger side window. Glass sprayed everywhere, cutting into the interior of the car and startling the woman. She screamed, instinctively ducking and trying to shield herself. The noise echoed down the quiet streets, drawing the attention of neighbors who peeked through their windows in shock. The calm of the night had been violently interrupted, replaced by fear and chaos. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as shards of glass fell around her. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her mind raced to make sense of what had just happened. The officer's car was still nearby, and his hand hovered near his weapon. She realized that her safety depended on keeping calm and thinking quickly. She took a deep breath and focused on moving her car out of immediate danger, inching forward carefully, her instincts guiding her. Bystanders had begun to gather, some taking out their phones to record the incident. The flashing lights of the patrol car created an unsettling mix of fear and tension. The woman's mind was racing, thinking of all the things she needed to do to protect herself and ensure that this situation did not escalate further. Her training as a prosecutor had taught her to remain calm under pressure, and now she relied on every ounce of composure she had. She slowly maneuvered her car to the side of the road, hands visible on the steering wheel. "Please, just calm down," she called out to the officer, her voice trembling slightly but steady enough to convey reason. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her body, her senses heightened as she anticipated every possible move. The officer's posture remained tense, his judgment still clouded by prejudice and fear. Neighbors and witnesses began calling 911, reporting the shooting and the dangerous situation unfolding in the quiet neighborhood. Some voices were panicked, others angry, but all were concerned for the woman's safety. She could hear snippets of their concern, which gave her a small measure of reassurance that she was not entirely alone in this moment. The presence of witnesses, she knew, would help ensure accountability, but the immediate danger was still very real. As the woman waited in her car, shards of glass glinting around her, She thought about her family, her career, and the principles she had dedicated her life to. She reflected on the irony of the situation. A public servant sworn to uphold the law, now targeted by someone whose duty was to protect the public. The injustice of it struck her deeply, but she knew that panic would only make the situation worse. Her focus remained on survival and de-escalation. The officer finally approached cautiously, though his movements were still tense and aggressive. The woman kept her hands raised slightly, holding her ID and badge clearly visible. She explained once more calmly and firmly who she was and that she posed no threat. Her voice was steady, a mix of authority and vulnerability. It was a moment that tested her resolve, her courage, and her belief in justice. In the midst of the chaos, she realized the importance of documentation. Every action, every word, every gesture mattered. She mentally prepared to recount every detail to authorities, knowing that her testimony could prevent further injustice. Her training, her experience in the courtroom, and her unwavering sense of right guided her through the fear. The officer paused, uncertainty flickering across his face as he finally took in her badge and identification. For the first time, the reality of what he had done began to sink in. The tension between them was thick, almost tangible. Bystanders whispered among themselves, recording the scene, adding to the officer's growing awareness that his actions were being scrutinized. Despite the fear, the woman maintained her composure. She did not shout. She did not make sudden movements. She remained calm and deliberate. Her professionalism in this moment contrasted sharply with the officer's irrationality. She reminded herself that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act correctly in spite of it. Minutes stretched like hours as the situation slowly began to stabilize. The officer called for backup, the sounds of sirens now blending with the nervous murmurs of witnesses. She stayed in her car, her hands still visible, taking deep breaths to steady her nerves. She focused on clarity, on keeping herself safe, and on ensuring that the truth of the incident would come to light. Finally, she saw a chance to move her car to a safer location. Slowly, cautiously, she followed the officer's instructions, careful to remain compliant while protecting herself. Every motion was deliberate, every word measured. She knew that any sudden action could escalate the situation further. As she drove to a safer spot, she could not shake the feeling of disbelief. She had faced dangerous situations in the courtroom, argued cases involving life and death, but nothing had prepared her for the personal confrontation with bias and fear in such a direct, violent way. The experience was a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the importance of vigilance, even for those who serve the law. Her mind raced with questions. How could someone entrusted with public safety make such a mistake? How many others had suffered from similar bias without the chance to assert their authority or their dignity? The thoughts were heavy, but she pushed them aside, focusing on the immediate need for calm and rational action. By the time she found a safe spot to stop, the officer had begun to reassess his actions, his demeanor shifting from aggression to hesitation. She had survived the immediate danger, but she knew the real work was just beginning. Documentation, reporting, and holding the officer accountable were now her priority. The night's events would not be forgotten, and she was determined to ensure that justice was served not just for herself, but for the community as a whole. Though shaken, she felt a sense of resolve. Her career had been built on confronting injustice and seeking truth. Tonight she faced it in the most personal way possible, and she was prepared to meet it head-on. The shards of glass around her car were not just physical fragments, but symbols of the prejudice and recklessness that she was determined to challenge. And as she took her first deep breaths of relief, she silently vowed that her voice, her authority, and her experience would shine through in the days to come, demanding accountability and respect in a world that too often failed to see it. The woman sat in her car, still trembling from the shock of the shattered window. Every muscle in her body ached from the sudden jolt of fear and the glass that had scratched her arms and legs. Her hands remained on the steering wheel, trying to steady her breathing while the flashing lights of the police car reflected in the broken shards around her. She was alive, but the danger had not entirely passed, and her mind raced with the questions she had no immediate answers to. Around her, the street began to fill with concerned neighbors. Doors opened, people peered out from windows, some holding phones to record the situation, others calling for emergency services. She felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. It was comforting to know that witnesses were present, but the awareness that this ordeal was happening in the middle of her neighborhood, where she had always felt safe, made the fear linger. The officer approached her car again, this time with slightly less aggression but still tense. His hands shook subtly, betraying the storm of doubt that had begun to enter his mind. He did not yet understand the full implications of his actions, and the woman could sense that he was struggling to regain control. She maintained eye contact, careful not to appear threatening yet firm in her stance. "I am not a threat," she said again, her voice calm but strong. "I am a prosecutor. I follow the law. Please tell me what you are doing." She held up her ID and badge once more, making it impossible for him to ignore her professional authority. The officer glanced down at the badge, hesitation flashing across his face. The reality of what he had just done began to sink in, but he was still unsure how to respond. As the tension held, she began to assess her situation. Her car had some damage, but it was drivable. She knew that staying put could escalate the danger if the officer panicked again, so she decided to carefully follow his instructions, to move her vehicle to a safer location. Slowly, she shifted the car into gear, hands visible on the wheel, and inched forward as the officer directed. Every movement was deliberate, measured, and conscious. She had to survive this, and she had to remain calm, no matter how difficult it was. The wind carried faint sounds of distant sirens approaching. She knew that backup was on the way, but she also understood that the next few moments were critical. If the officer acted impulsively again, there could be serious consequences. Her mind ran through every possible scenario, thinking strategically about what could help her de-escalate the situation. She focused on her breathing, her posture, and her words, ensuring that nothing would provoke him further. Neighbors continued to gather, their whispers blending into a tense hum. Some shouted encouragements, warning the officer to be careful. Others captured the unfolding drama on their phones, their presence inadvertently increasing the accountability of the situation. She felt a sense of validation knowing that there were witnesses to her side of the story. This could prevent further escalation and provide proof if legal actions were needed later. The officer finally directed her to stop the car in a driveway slightly away from the main road. She complied immediately, keeping her hands on the wheel, her body alert but as relaxed as she could manage. She knew that sudden movements could be misinterpreted, and she wanted to ensure that nothing provoked the officer further. The shards of glass from the shattered window reflected the lights in small, sharp flashes, a constant reminder of how close she had come to serious harm. She looked around her, trying to assess any immediate threats. Her heart was still racing, but she forced herself to focus. She noted that the neighbors were attentive, ready to intervene if necessary. The officer finally stopped a few feet from her car, still holding his weapon but no longer pointing it directly at her. He muttered something under his breath, probably realizing the gravity of his action. The woman took the opportunity to speak again, her voice steady and commanding. "This situation does not need to escalate further. I am unarmed, I am compliant, and I am a prosecutor. Please lower your weapon and we can handle this calmly." Her tone was firm but not accusatory. She understood that fear could make people act irrationally, and she wanted to give him a chance to correct his actions without violence. Slowly, the officer lowered his weapon slightly, though his movements were hesitant. The woman sensed the shift in his demeanor and continued speaking, explaining calmly who she was and why there was no threat. She mentioned her role in the district attorney's office, her daily work in enforcing the law, and the importance of respecting citizens' rights. Her words were deliberate, aiming to humanize herself in his eyes, to make him see beyond his prejudices. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder. Relief washed over her. She knew that backup would provide additional oversight and prevent the situation from worsening. She glanced at the neighbors, their concerned faces reinforcing her sense of reality and accountability. The presence of witnesses would ensure that every action taken by the officer was recorded and scrutinized. Minutes passed, each one feeling longer than the last. The woman remained in her car, her posture alert but composed. She thought about the people she served as a prosecutor, the cases she had worked on, and the principles she had upheld. The irony of being targeted by someone whose duty was to protect the public was not lost on her. But she held on to her calm, relying on her experience and professionalism to guide her through the immediate danger. When additional officers arrived, the situation began to stabilize. The new officers quickly assessed the scene and ensured that everyone was safe. They spoke to the officer who had fired the weapon, trying to understand his actions and the circumstances that led to such an irrational decision. The woman remained in her car, observing carefully, making mental notes of the sequence of events, preparing for the report she would file later. After a tense few minutes, the officer who had fired the shot was asked to step aside. He looked shaken, confused, and ashamed, finally realizing the seriousness of his actions. The woman felt a mixture of relief and anger, relief that the immediate threat had passed, and anger at the unnecessary danger she had faced because of bias and poor judgment. She knew that the next steps were crucial: reporting the incident, ensuring accountability, and preventing something like this from happening to anyone else. Neighbors approached cautiously, some offering support, others simply trying to understand what had happened. The woman thanked them for staying calm and for being witnesses. She knew that their presence would help substantiate her account of the events. The feeling of community, even in such a tense moment, provided a small sense of reassurance. The officer who had fired the weapon was eventually escorted away by his colleagues. She watched him leave, a sense of gravity settling over her. She realized that what had happened was not just a personal danger, but a reflection of larger issues in society. Bias, fear, and prejudice could turn even those sworn to uphold the law into threats. She resolved to use this experience to advocate for awareness, accountability, and change. As she finally stepped out of her car, she felt the cuts from the glass on her arms and legs. Minor injuries, but a stark reminder of how quickly a normal night could turn dangerous. Emergency responders checked her over, ensuring she was physically unharmed. She explained calmly what had happened, detailing every aspect of the encounter with precision and clarity. Her composure impressed those around her, and she felt a sense of empowerment despite the trauma. Later, as she walked to a safer location with the assistance of responders, she reflected on the ordeal. The fear, the shock, and the adrenaline were intense, but she had survived. She had handled the situation with calm and professionalism, even when faced with irrational aggression. The incident reinforced her belief in the importance of justice, vigilance, and courage in the face of danger. Though shaken, she felt stronger. She knew that she would report the incident fully, ensure accountability, and advocate for measures that could prevent similar incidents in the future. The experience, though frightening, had reaffirmed her commitment to her work and to standing up against injustice. She would not allow fear or prejudice to silence her, and she would continue to serve her community with integrity, courage, and determination. The night had been terrifying, but it had also shown her the power of resilience and the importance of remaining calm, even when confronted with unexpected danger. The tension in the neighborhood had not yet fully lifted, even after the backup officers arrived. The woman remained inside her car, alert, her eyes scanning every movement around her. She could feel the lingering fear from the earlier incident, but she also felt a rising sense of determination. She had survived a dangerous confrontation, and now she needed to ensure that justice and accountability were upheld. The officer who had fired at her car was visibly shaken. His hands trembled slightly and his voice faltered as he tried to explain his actions to the other officers. He seemed unsure even to himself why he had reacted with such aggression. The woman, still inside her vehicle, observed quietly. She knew that his uncertainty could be a moment for clarity and de-escalation. Her professional instincts told her to remain calm and composed, to assert her authority without escalating the situation further. She lowered her window slightly and addressed the officers calmly. "I am unarmed. I am a prosecutor. I am following the law. There is no threat here. Please, let's handle this professionally." Her voice was firm but not confrontational. She wanted to communicate that she was aware of her rights, that she understood the law, and that she expected to be treated with respect and fairness, acknowledging the role their observations would play in ensuring that justice was served. Their support gave her confidence, but it also reminded her of the shared responsibility of community and oversight. Later that day, she visited the police department to file a formal complaint. Walking through the doors, she felt the weight of authority and professionalism she carried. Her purpose was clear: to report an incident of police misconduct and ensure that those responsible were held accountable. She calmly explained what had happened, presenting her evidence and recounted the sequence of events with precision. She remained composed, her demeanor measured and authoritative, despite the lingering tension within her. The staff at the department listened attentively, recording her statements and taking note of the evidence. The woman could sense that her words were being taken seriously, but she also understood that the bureaucratic process could be slow. Patience would be required as well as persistence. She was prepared for both, confident in the legitimacy of her claims and the clarity of her account. News of the incident quickly spread. Local media outlets picked up the story, drawn by the dramatic sequence of events and the underlying issues of bias and misconduct. The woman remained in control of her narrative, giving interviews that emphasized the importance of justice, fairness, and accountability. She spoke not just of her personal experience, but also of the broader implications for the community. Her words resonated with many, highlighting the need for reform and vigilance. In the days that followed, public reaction intensified. Social media platforms were filled with discussions about the incident. Many expressed outrage at the officer's actions, while others debated the broader context of policing, bias, and accountability. The woman followed these discussions closely, understanding the power of public attention in influencing outcomes. She remained careful not to allow sensationalism to overshadow the factual account she was presenting. Maintaining her professionalism and focus, simultaneously, an internal investigation began within the police department. The officer involved was suspended pending review, and interviews were conducted with witnesses, colleagues, and supervisors. The woman cooperated fully, providing detailed testimony and answering questions with clarity and precision. Her goal was to ensure that the facts were accurately represented and that the investigation would reflect the reality of the incident. Throughout the process, she encountered a range of emotions. There was lingering fear from the night of the shooting, frustration at the need to navigate bureaucracy, and determination to ensure that justice was served. She balanced these feelings with a clear focus on action and responsibility, refusing to allow anger or fear to compromise her professionalism or clarity. She also spent time reflecting privately, considering the broader implications of the event. The incident was not just a personal confrontation with bias. It was a reflection of systemic issues within law enforcement. She thought about the importance of awareness, training, and accountability, recognizing that her experience could serve as a catalyst for change. She resolved to advocate for measures that would prevent similar incidents from occurring to others. In the days that followed, she met with legal advisors to discuss potential courses of action. The woman considered filing additional reports, pursuing civil remedies, and working with community organizations to promote awareness and reform. Each decision was weighed carefully, balancing the immediate need for accountability with long-term impact. Her approach was deliberate, grounded in reason, and informed by her professional expertise. Meanwhile, the officer who had fired the weapon faced scrutiny. His colleagues and supervisors evaluated his conduct, assessing both the immediate incident and his broader history. The woman understood that accountability required transparency, thorough review, and appropriate consequences. She remained steadfast in her role, ensuring that the process moved forward fairly and effectively. Community engagement became a central element in the aftermath. The woman participated in meetings and discussions with local organizations, law enforcement officials, and residents. She shared her experience, emphasizing the importance of oversight, training, and respect for citizens' rights. Her perspective, grounded in personal experience and professional insight, was compelling. She advocated not for vengeance but for justice, education, and reform. Throughout this period, she maintained her professional responsibilities as a prosecutor. She balanced her regular work with the ongoing process of addressing the incident. Her commitment to her cases, her clients, and the law did not waver. She demonstrated resilience, the ability to manage stress, and the strength to uphold her duties under challenging circumstances. The woman also focused on self-care and support. She spoke with trusted friends and family members, sharing her feelings, fears, and reflections. Their encouragement and guidance helped her process the trauma and maintain perspective. She recognized the importance of emotional resilience alongside professional diligence, understanding that both were necessary to navigate the challenges she faced. Media interviews and public statements continued, with the woman emphasizing accountability and reform. She highlighted the importance of community involvement, transparency, and training for law enforcement officers. Her approach was measured, clear, and persuasive, aiming to foster understanding rather than division. Her focus remained on the long-term goal of justice and systemic improvement. The internal investigation continued in parallel with public discourse. Reports were compiled, interviews conducted, and evidence reviewed. The woman participated actively, providing testimony, reviewing documentation, and ensuring that the truth was accurately represented. She remained vigilant, aware that the integrity of the process depended on meticulous attention to detail and steadfast adherence to fact. As the days turned into weeks, the woman observed the beginning of tangible outcomes. The officer faced formal consequences, including potential retraining, suspension, or disciplinary action. Policies and procedures within the department were reviewed, with consideration given to preventing similar incidents in the future. The woman's involvement had a clear impact, demonstrating the power of courage, professionalism, and persistence. Throughout the process, she reflected on her experience and its implications. She recognized the intersection of personal courage, professional responsibility, and community oversight. Her actions demonstrated that even in moments of fear and danger, clarity, composure, and commitment to justice could prevail. She understood that her experience could inspire others, encourage reform, and strengthen the principles of accountability and fairness. In the midst of the public and professional attention, she continued to focus on her daily responsibilities. Court cases, legal meetings, and community advocacy remained central to her routine. She balanced the demands of her profession with the ongoing process of addressing the incident. Demonstrating resilience, dedication, and adaptability, the woman also considered the broader lessons from the event. Bias, fear, and prejudice could manifest in dangerous ways, even among those entrusted with authority. Awareness, training, and accountability were essential to prevent harm. She committed herself to contributing to solutions, advocating for education, oversight, and systemic improvement. By the end of Part 4, the immediate crisis had transitioned into a period of action, reflection, and advocacy. The woman had survived the danger, ensured documentation and accountability, and engaged with her community and professional colleagues to promote justice. Her experience underscored the importance of courage, composure, and persistence in confronting bias and maintaining the integrity of the law. Though the incident had been frightening, it had also demonstrated the power of resilience, professionalism, and committed advocacy in the pursuit of justice. The weeks that followed the incident were filled with both tension and purpose for the woman. Each day brought new developments in the investigation, new media coverage, and new opportunities to advocate for change. She continued her work as a prosecutor with her usual diligence, but her thoughts often returned to the night that had so abruptly disrupted her life. She reflected on the fear, the adrenaline, and the realization that bias could escalate to danger in an instant. Despite the trauma, she found herself growing stronger, more focused, and more determined to ensure justice prevailed. The officer who had fired the weapon faced formal proceedings. The department reviewed his record, conducted interviews, and assessed the circumstances that led to his actions. He appeared at hearings with his colleagues, facing questions about judgment, bias, and responsibility. The woman attended these proceedings, observing carefully, making mental notes, and ensuring that the truth was accurately represented. Her presence was a quiet assertion that accountability was not negotiable. She also continued to work closely with community organizations. Meetings were held to discuss training programs for officers, bias awareness initiatives, and public safety measures. The woman contributed her insight, sharing her experience and emphasizing the importance of vigilance, professional conduct, and community engagement. Her words resonated, inspiring others to take action and fostering a collaborative approach to preventing similar incidents in the future. Media attention remained steady, but she maintained control over her narrative. Interviews and statements were carefully worded, emphasizing the facts of the incident, the importance of accountability, and the broader implications for community trust in law enforcement. She avoided sensationalism, focusing on clarity, reason, and advocacy. Her measured approach drew respect from both journalists and the public, reinforcing the credibility of her account. Throughout this period, she also prioritized her well-being. The emotional toll of the incident was significant, and she sought support from trusted friends and family. Conversations helped her process fear, frustration, and anger, while also reinforcing her determination to use the experience as a catalyst for change. She balanced self-care with professional responsibility, recognizing that both were necessary to navigate the challenges she faced. The internal investigation concluded with formal recommendations. The officer faced disciplinary actions, including suspension and retraining, emphasizing the importance of responsible conduct and accountability. The department implemented additional measures to prevent similar incidents, such as bias awareness training and revised protocols for traffic stops. The woman's advocacy played a critical role in shaping these outcomes, highlighting the impact of courage, persistence, and professionalism. She also took the opportunity to speak publicly about the incident. Community forums, educational seminars, and advocacy groups welcomed her insight. She spoke about the importance of upholding the law with integrity, treating all citizens with respect, and recognizing the dangers of bias in positions of authority. Her narrative was powerful not because of dramatization, but because of authenticity, clarity, and lived experience. In her professional role, she continued to handle cases with the same dedication as before. She drew strength from her work, finding purpose in serving justice and advocating for fairness. The experience of the incident had deepened her understanding of human behavior, the complexities of law enforcement, and the importance of ethical vigilance. She approached her work with renewed focus, aware of the broader social context in which legal systems operate. The woman also engaged with local law enforcement leadership. Meetings were held to discuss policies, training improvements, and strategies to build trust between officers and the community. She contributed practical insights, grounded in her personal experience and professional expertise. Her involvement helped bridge gaps, foster understanding, and promote systemic change, emphasizing that constructive dialogue was essential to meaningful reform. Her interactions with the media and community were carefully balanced. She provided factual accounts, shared lessons learned, and highlighted actionable steps for reform. She avoided personalizing the narrative into anger or revenge, instead focusing on fairness, transparency, and education. Her approach inspired confidence in her leadership, both as a public servant and as a survivor advocating for justice. As the weeks progressed, she noticed tangible changes in the community. Officers demonstrated increased awareness, residents felt more confident in reporting concerns, and programs were initiated to educate both the public and law enforcement about bias, safety, and communication. Her involvement had created ripples of awareness and accountability, demonstrating the power of measured action and consistent advocacy. She also reflected privately on the personal growth that had emerged from the ordeal. Fear had been transformed into resilience, uncertainty into clarity, and anger into purposeful action. She acknowledged the emotional toll, but she also celebrated the strength and courage she had discovered within herself. The incident had challenged her, but it had also fortified her, leaving her more capable of navigating both professional and personal challenges. The officer involved faced ongoing scrutiny and review, reinforcing the importance of accountability in law enforcement. The woman continued to participate in discussions about training, oversight, and community engagement, contributing to reforms that could prevent future incidents. Her voice carried authority and credibility, grounded in lived experience and professional insight. Community support remained strong. Neighbors, colleagues, and advocacy groups acknowledged her role in bringing attention to the incident, fostering dialogue, and promoting fairness. Their encouragement reinforced her commitment to justice and to using her experience to create positive change. She felt a sense of responsibility not just to herself, but to the community and to future generations who might benefit from her advocacy. In addition to her professional and advocacy work, she took time to reflect on the broader social implications. The incident highlighted systemic issues, including the influence of bias, the challenges of accountability, and the importance of oversight. She considered ways to contribute to lasting change, both through legal channels and community engagement. Her reflections informed her ongoing work and strengthened her resolve to pursue justice in every aspect of her life. Throughout this period, she remained focused on integrity, clarity, and professionalism. Every statement, every action, and every decision was measured and deliberate. She understood that her credibility was central to her advocacy, and she maintained consistency in her approach. Her dedication to truth, fairness, and accountability became a model for others facing similar challenges. By the time the incident's immediate aftermath concluded, the woman had achieved multiple goals. Her personal safety had been preserved, the officer faced consequences, and reforms were underway to prevent similar situations. She had navigated fear, stress, and uncertainty with composure, demonstrating resilience, courage, and leadership. Her experience had become both a personal journey and a catalyst for broader awareness and systemic change. She continued to advocate for accountability, fairness, and reform, using her platform to educate, inspire, and foster dialogue. The community benefited from her insights. Law enforcement gained valuable feedback, and public awareness of bias and safety increased. Her role as a prosecutor and as a survivor of the incident intersected, creating a unique and powerful perspective that emphasized justice, vigilance, and professionalism. Ultimately, the woman emerged from the experience stronger and more resolute. The night of fear, the broken glass, and the threat had tested her in ways she could not have anticipated. Yet through calm focus and determination, she had not only survived but had turned the incident into an opportunity for advocacy, reform, and education. She had faced danger directly, upheld her principles, and influenced change that extended beyond herself. Her story became a testament to resilience, courage, and integrity. She demonstrated that even in moments of fear and uncertainty, measured action, professionalism, and dedication to justice could create meaningful impact. The incident was a reminder that accountability matters, that community oversight is essential, and that courage in the face of danger can inspire positive change. Through her experience, she had transformed a night of terror into a lasting legacy of advocacy, fairness, and empowerment.